some people become so disunified, so completely disconnected, and then it just becomes their normal. You'll even hear of some people say, oh, just, unless you really need to get married, just don't. Marriage is a real drag, all that sort of thing. My goodness, I could not even imagine entertaining the idea of, having our marriage a drag. It's so completely unnecessary. I just want to share a couple of interesting ideas here. And this is that no one ever enters into a relationship hoping that someday it's going to fail or fall apart. I mean, what tends to happen? When two people get together, boy meets girl, girl meets boy, man meets woman, woman meets man, or something like that, whatever, and people have a tendency within the first few weeks, oh, I think I'm in love. Oh, I just feel like I love this person. And it's important just to distinguish the difference here between actually loving someone, feeling in love with someone, and loving how it is that a person makes you feel. All right? Because some people actually just fall in love with the feeling of feeling in love. And this is kind of an interesting idea. And it brings us back to unity just a little bit. Because love is selfless. Love looks like one person putting another person first at all times. All right? Feeling that one is in love is all about the feeling of infatuation, the warm, the fuzzies, the butterflies in the stomach. And some people love the feeling, but the feeling is not love within itself. All right? Just an interesting idea.
So it's a really important point, actually, because many people reach the stage where they say they've fallen out of love in their relationship, which
you can't.
The feeling's gone. So love, as you rightly say, is selfless, and it's actually a choice, a decision to love the other person. The feelings come and go. That's part of the process.
I will vouch for that. Sometimes I do not feel like loving my wife. All right. And I do recall that day on July the 28th, 2013. I was just testing to make sure you remember. July the 28th, 2013, standing at the altar. And believe it or not, I actually gave some careful considerations to the words that I took. For better or for worse, for sickness and in health, till death do us part, I do. And these are words that we see them on the movies and we hear them and they get branded around and people say them, feeling all excited at the thought of getting married and they love their wedding day and there's lots of photographs going on and all the bridesmaids and all the friends are there saying, oh, doesn't she look pretty or doesn't he look pretty or whatever. But the words within themselves, right? Two people's willingness to actually say those words from a place of intentionality is going to determine whether a marriage gets off to a strong start or not, and whether it does actually see beyond and last beyond kind of 12 months, 24 months, 36 months or whatever. A common problem that many people in the early stages of marriage especially occurs that they don't know what a healthy union looks like. Yeah. All right, and come on, if we look throughout society today, where do you come across strong, mature, sensible husband-wife relationships? And they're few and far between, aren't they? I mean, I know my parents got divorced after 28 years of marriage. Essentially, my sister and I had reached a point where I'd left home, I'd going to join the army, I was away doing my thing, my sister was away doing her thing. And then, after kids had left home, there was nothing keeping the family together, so they got divorced. And that was it. What a waste. 28 years. And again, some people will say, but we just fell out of love. We just grew apart, kind of like it was a destiny thing, just circumstantial. In order to remain unified in a marriage or a relationship, two people have to fight for this. All right? You might think that fighting's all about kind of bringing disunity in. No. We're not talking about fighting with the person. We're talking about fighting for the unity and for the cohesion. Because it's easier to bring or to allow disunity into a relationship than what it is to really fight for unity. Fighting for unity actually looks like, okay, so we have very different perspectives, very different outlooks on life. We have very different, attitudes towards standards, towards maintaining a home, towards work ethic. We have very different standards. All right. Yeah. So the question is, am I willing to focus on all what I would deem as being the imperfections and focus on the problems, or am I going to focus on the health of the marriage and say, right, okay, let us work together and strengthen this area. Let us work together and agree on what the standards are in this area of our life, so we both come into complete agreement.
It's really true. I think you've hit the nail on the head, because, in an argument, for say some two people might be fighting for their own perspective. I'm right. No, I'm right. You're wrong. But actually, the fighting that you're talking about, that we're talking about, is actually fighting for the marriage, fighting for the entity, for the connection, the relationship, which is different. It's about, our experience has been putting aside our selfishness and actually what we individually want, and what's the best for both of us here, and how we're going to come into agreement on that.
It's one thing, if my number one priority in the marriage was kind of putting Karen's thoughts and feelings, first, then I might end up appeasing, become a little bit of a yes man, a person pleaser. And likewise, if Karen was to put my preferences and my likes and my happiness first, she might end up compromising her own. And that's not unity, right? That's just not what it is. What Karen has rightly said is, when we commit to the collaboration, we commit to unifying and collaborating together, it becomes a healthier perspective to prioritize the health of the entity being the union, the marriage. Because if we ask the question, okay, what's best for the marriage, then we're asking now a very different question than what we would be asking. So what's best for me? What's best for you? If my attitude is what's best for me, then I'm putting myself first and Karen second. And likewise, if I'm saying, well, what's best for Karen here, then I might be choosing what I think is best for Karen, but then I can end up undermining the marriage and the unity through the process. So when we come into agreement, okay, so this is the problem, this is the challenge that we have in this area of our marriage or business or life or home or whatever, right? What's the best standard that we can integrate into our marriage for the health of the longevity of the marriage?
I think that is true. And how you've actually really helpfully influenced our marriage in this area, because you've often gone to have those hard conversations, or come to me and we've had these hard conversations about, look, this is not working. This area is not working. Can we agree on the standard that we both want to commit to, which means that we both then know what we can expect from each other, and then it not be disappointed,
Then we also have a basis for holding each other to account, right? Because if we think about what the foundation is of any healthy marriage, it's going to be trust, right? So if we're putting the unity first as the major priority, then the trust just naturally grows through the process. It means that the pair of us are actually invested into something than either of us independently. All right, it's kind of like a business, right? I don't know if you have any business experience whatsoever, right? We have built a couple of businesses over the years, some for better, some for worse. We've learned a few lessons along the way, and what we have also learned through exactly the same process is that there have been times in our business life that we've ended up prioritizing appeasing and keeping certain individuals happy that came at the cost of the growth in the business. We've had certain individuals who've come into our lives over the years, so we prioritize, keep this person happy, and ended up compromising our own kind of time, space.
It's true. And I'm kind of thinking examples here, because it would probably be quite helpful. Like there's times where, like for example, I can see that, Kane, you're really tired. You've been working really hard. He probably just wants to have a night off, right? We'll not go for any exercise tonight. We'll just chill out. But actually, if we're prioritizing our health and our longevity and our marriage together, the better, wiser decision would be to get off our bums and go and commit to our standard, what we've actually agreed upon. So just an example of how we now start influencing each other a little bit better.
Listen, I come from a military background. So, for me, order and structure is really important, right? For me, just, everything having a home, having a place for everything. Some people would say that's OCD. No, just high cleanliness standards. It means that it just enables, heightened efficiency around the home. Karen, not of the same level of background and experience, would sometimes have a tendency of allowing a pile of clothes to mount up on the back of a certain chair, and it would get higher and higher and higher and higher and higher and higher. And said, right, okay. A clean home, an ordered home is a happy home. Listen, I would really appreciate it. I would really, really appreciate it if we could just have a home for everything. Rather than having stuff lying around, because if we want to start a family, all right, and we're just allowing mess in this corner, and what we're showing children is that it's okay to make a mess. And that's going to come back and cost us time and space later on in our marriage. So what do we want? What do we actually want? And we're given a couple of examples here that may or may not make sense to you, all right? But just to show you how, we're only ever one conversation away from removing disunity from an area in our marriage and replacing it with unity. Unity is simply about two people coming into agreement. What do we want here? What's the standard going to be? What are we both willing to commit to? And then we've now both got a basis for holding each other to account, both knowing that, okay, so if you kind of go against this, or if I go against this, then I'm going to be giving you every reason not to trust me. And likewise, if Karen goes against it, you're going to be giving me every reason not to trust you. And it doesn't matter how silly or irrelevant you think the request is, all right? When we think, if we want to kind of understand the importance of this principle, think about all the niggles that you have in your relationship. Would you have your partner do this? Would you have your partner do that? How about this? How about raise a standard here? How about get a bit more exercise? How about this? It's always easier to appreciate our own preferences and our own requests or our own niggles than another person's, all right? So what we're talking about here is in a unified state, when two people are actually willing to be completely honest with each other, we can just let our requests be known. If the other person decides that the unity in the marriage is worth working for and fighting for, then it's not going to be a problem making some minor tweaks or adjustments. It just becomes part of the relational process.
It's true. And, there's the choice that you get presented with then when somebody chooses to be honest. Like, you've chosen to be honest with me about some things that you would like us to work on. I can either choose to dig my heels in and say, well, actually, no, my way of doing things is right. I've always done things this way. Why do we need to change that? Or I can actually look to learn from your experience and your life lessons to date and realise and appreciate, well, if I actually want to unify, then that means coming into agreement. That means choosing to work together on the things that are important to you and on the things that are important to me. So that, and that is about building the trust, because unless you unify, unless you come into agreement, then trust is going to be on shaky ground.